I thought life was finally stable. A good job, a wife I adored, and dreams of starting a family together. But when the moment came, when the delivery room filled with cries of a newborn, I felt my world collapse. The child wasn't mine. The truth was written across her face in ways that left no room for denial. Betrayal doesn't always come in loud explosions. It can come in silence, in the quiet gasp when you realize your whole life has been a lie. This is the story of how I lost everything, and what I learned when the mask finally slipped. My name is Daniel. I grew up believing in loyalty, in family, and in the promises two people make when they say, "I do." For years, I worked tirelessly to build a life my wife, Claire, and I could be proud of. We lived in a modest home on the outskirts of Chicago, nothing extravagant but filled with warmth. I often joked that Claire was the heart of our home, while I was just the roof keeping the storms away. I had met Claire in college. She wasn't just beautiful. She was radiant, the kind of woman who walked into a room and pulled every pair of eyes toward her. Yet she had chosen me. That was the thought that gave me strength on long nights at work, pushing papers and chasing deadlines. I wanted to provide for us. I wanted to prove myself worthy of the woman who had once whispered she'd follow me anywhere. Our marriage had its bumps, like any other. Work sometimes kept me away longer than I liked. She wanted more adventures, more late-night conversations, while I often came home too exhausted to offer more than a tired smile. But I told myself this was marriage, real marriage. Not the fairy tale, but the grind, the sacrifice. When Claire told me she was pregnant, I was overwhelmed with joy. It felt like the missing piece was finally falling into place. We spent evenings painting the nursery, choosing colors we couldn't quite agree on. I wanted soft blues and greens. She leaned toward brighter, louder tones. We laughed about it, teased each other, and for a while, I believed this was the happiness we had been waiting for. During the pregnancy, though, I noticed changes. Claire grew distant at times. Her phone became an extension of her hand, and when I asked, she said it was just her friends checking in. I wanted to believe her. Trust is the glue of marriage, and once you let suspicion in, everything cracks. So I ignored the nagging voice, telling myself it was hormones, or maybe just stress. I was wrong. The weeks leading up to the birth were tense. I felt it in the silence between us, in the way she avoided my eyes sometimes. But whenever I questioned her, she brushed it off, wrapping her arms around me and whispering, "You're overthinking." I wanted to believe it. I needed to believe it. The night before she went into labor, I lay awake beside her, staring at the ceiling, replaying every laugh, every kiss, every promise. I had given everything I had to this marriage. I thought of the sacrifices, the promotions I turned down, the trips I never took, the friends I'd slowly lost touch with, all for the sake of being present, of building a family. And then the day came. The hospital smelled of antiseptic and nerves. I held Claire's hand as she screamed through contractions, whispering encouragements, tears streaming down my face as I watched the woman I loved endure the hardest pain of her life. Hours felt like centuries until, finally, the room filled with the first cries of our child. But when I looked at her, something inside me shattered. I can't describe it without sounding cruel, but it was undeniable. This baby wasn't mine. She didn't look like me. She didn't even look like Claire. She was beautiful, but in her features I saw a truth I wasn't prepared for. The nurses congratulated us. The doctor smiled, and Claire just stared at me with a look I'll never forget. A look of quiet terror, like she knew exactly what I had realized. I left the room under the pretense of making a phone call, but really I was collapsing inside. My chest felt tight, my hands shook, and the hallways of the hospital blurred as though the walls themselves were mocking me. Later that night, I confronted her, not with shouting, but with silence. I simply asked, "Whose child is she?" Claire broke down. She confessed it had been going on for months, that while I was working late, while I was sacrificing for us, she had found comfort in someone else, someone I knew. A coworker from her office, a man who had been at our dinner table, who had shaken my hand and laughed at my jokes. The betrayal was a knife, twisted deeper with every word she spoke. The days that followed were a blur of rage and grief. I couldn't look at Claire without seeing the lies. I couldn't hold the baby without feeling the sting of betrayal. And yet, she was innocent. A child brought into this world with no fault of her own, no part in the choices that had shattered our lives. I wrestled with questions that had no answers. Do I stay for the child, raise her as my own despite knowing the truth? Do I walk away and let them both go? Every option felt like a wound that would never heal. The climax came one evening, when Claire begged me to stay. She sobbed, clinging to me, saying we could rebuild, that love could conquer even this. But I saw through her desperation. This wasn't love. Love doesn't lie in the dark while pretending to smile in the light. I packed my bags that night, not with anger, but with sorrow so heavy it felt like my body was breaking. I left the house, the nursery, the life I had built with my own hands. I walked away from the illusion, from the cage of betrayal. It's been months since that day, and the pain hasn't vanished. It lingers, like a scar you trace with your fingers, remembering how deep the wound once was. But pain, I've learned, can be a teacher. I realized betrayal doesn't define me. It doesn't erase the love I gave, the sacrifices I made, or the loyalty I lived by. If anything, it revealed a truth I had ignored for too long. Trust, once broken, can never be restored to what it once was. As for Claire and her child, they continue their lives without me. And while it hurts to admit, I wish the child no harm. She deserved better than to be born into lies. Betrayal isn't just about losing someone. It's about losing the version of yourself that believed you were safe. But sometimes losing that illusion is the only way to grow stronger. So if you're listening and you've been betrayed, remember this: their choices don't define your worth. Your loyalty, your love, your sacrifices, they still matter. And one day, you'll see that walking away from lies is the first step toward finding the truth you deserve. Because in the end, betrayal isn't the end of your story. It's just the beginning of a new one.